I can't close my legs." Emily Harper's trembling voice barely rose above the clatter of shattered bowls as she crumpled onto the polished hardwood floor. A tray loaded with scalding lobster bisque had exploded across her body only seconds earlier, soaking her uniform and burning through the thin fabric clinging to her thighs. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she instinctively tried to pull her legs together, only to cry out in fresh agony. "It hurts! Please! Somebody help me!" Instead of rushing to her side, a cruel laugh echoed through the crowded dining room. Maybe if she wasn't so clumsy, this wouldn't have happened. Several employees looked away. Others smirked. Not one of them moved. Then a chair scraped sharply across the floor. The sound sliced through every conversation in the restaurant. A tall man in an impeccably tailored black suit rose from his table with terrifying calm. Dark tattoos disappeared beneath his rolled sleeves as 6 silent bodyguards entered through separate doors, surrounding the dining room with military precision. Without saying a word, the stranger removed his expensive suit jacket and gently draped it over Emily's trembling legs, shielding her from dozens of staring eyes. Only then did he lift his gaze toward the restaurant manager. His voice remained perfectly controlled. "Lock every door." The room fell into absolute silence. "The person who pushed her," he continued quietly, "is walking out of this building today." A pause. But not as an employee. No one in the restaurant realized that the man kneeling beside the sobbing waitress wasn't simply a wealthy customer. He was Massimo De Lorenzo, the most feared Mafia boss in the Northeast. The dinner rush at Bella Vista had always been controlled chaos. Crystal glasses chimed softly beneath golden chandeliers. Servers glided between tables with polished smiles, while the open kitchen released waves of garlic butter, fresh herbs, and sizzling steaks into the elegant dining room. To every guest, it looked effortless. Emily Harper knew better. By 6:30 on a Friday evening, her feet already throbbed inside shoes that were half a size too small. 12 hours of standing had left her lower back aching, but she greeted every customer with the same warm smile she had practiced since her first day, nearly 4 years earlier. Kindness cost nothing. That was what her late mother had always told her, even when people didn't deserve it. Emily carried herself with quiet confidence, despite years of hearing whispered comments about her curvy figure. She wasn't petite like the women featured in the restaurant's promotional brochures, nor did she fit the polished image some of her co-workers believed represented luxury hospitality. Rachel Whitford reminded her of that almost every day. "There she goes," Rachel muttered, while polishing wine glasses behind the service station. "Taking up the whole hallway again." 2 younger servers laughed under their breath. Emily pretended not to hear. She had become an expert at pretending the jokes didn't sting, pretending the whispered insults weren't real, pretending the schedules that always assigned her the heaviest sections were simple coincidence. Only one person consistently treated her with genuine respect. Grace Donovan, the restaurant's oldest waitress, quietly squeezed Emily's shoulder while passing by. "Ignore them," Emily smiled. "I'm trying." Grace lowered her voice. "They're trying harder lately." Emily knew exactly what she meant. Over the previous month, strange things kept happening. Reservations mysteriously disappeared from Emily's section. Customer orders were reassigned moments before large tips arrived. Expensive bottles of wine somehow appeared under her employee number, despite her never touching them. Each incident earned another warning from management. Manager Kevin Doyle never investigated. He simply sighed dramatically before placing another disciplinary notice into Emily's personnel file. "You have to be more careful." Always the same sentence. Never directed at anyone else. Emily often wondered why. Tonight felt different. Rachel kept glancing toward the kitchen entrance with an unreadable smile. Marcus Hale, the head chef, frowned as he noticed the exchange, but became distracted when another order bell rang. "Emily," Marcus called. "Table 14, lobster bisque. Careful, the bowls are scorching." "I've got it." Emily carefully lifted the oversized silver tray onto her shoulder. Steam curled upward from 6 porcelain bowls filled almost to the brim. Each step demanded perfect balance. She moved slowly through the narrow service corridor, separating the kitchen from the main dining room. Halfway through the doorway, someone brushed against her shoulder. Not hard, just enough. Her foot landed awkwardly. The tray shifted violently. Emily instinctively tried to recover. For one impossible second, she almost succeeded. Then another impact struck from behind. Sharper, intentional. The heavy tray flew forward. Boiling soup erupted into the air. Screams filled the restaurant. Porcelain shattered against polished wood. Emily crashed onto the floor as scalding liquid drenched her uniform from waist to knees. The pain didn't arrive immediately. Shock came first. Then fire. Pure, unbearable fire. She gasped, desperately trying to move, but every attempt sent another wave of agony racing through her legs. Her breathing became ragged.
I can't!
She tried pulling her knees together. The burned skin protested instantly. "I can't close my legs." Tears spilled freely now. "It hurts." Guests stared in horror. Someone finally called for an ambulance. Yet among the employees, something felt wrong. Rachel stood several feet away, watching, not panicking, watching. And then, she smiled. For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. The dining room remained frozen beneath the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, while Emily's painful sobs echoed across the polished hardwood floor. Customers stared in disbelief. Several diners instinctively reached for their phones, uncertain whether to call emergency services or record what they were witnessing. Rachel finally broke the silence. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed dramatically, covering her mouth. "Emily, how could you be so careless?" Her performance was flawless. Anyone who hadn't witnessed the collision would have believed she was genuinely concerned. Kevin Doyle hurried from the manager's office, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the floor. "What happened here?" Rachel answered before anyone else could. "Emily lost her balance. I tried to warn her, but she wasn't paying attention." Kevin sighed heavily. Again, that single word struck Emily almost as painfully as the burns spreading across her thighs. Again, as if she had always been the problem, Emily tried to lift herself, using one trembling arm. "I didn't fall by myself." Her voice barely carried across the room. "Someone." Another wave of pain forced her to stop. She squeezed her eyes shut as tears streamed freely down her cheeks. "I was pushed." Rachel immediately scoffed. "Seriously?" She folded her arms. "You're blaming someone else now." A few younger employees nodded. Kevin rubbed his forehead. "Emily, let's not do this right now." Grace Donovan suddenly stepped forward. "No." Every head turned. I saw someone behind her. Rachel's expression stiffened for only a fraction of a second. "You couldn't possibly have seen that." Grace didn't look away. "I've worked in restaurants for 31 years. Her voice remained calm. "I know the difference between someone losing balance and someone being shoved." The atmosphere instantly changed. Guests began whispering among themselves. Massimo remained kneeling beside Emily, carefully keeping his suit jacket over her legs to preserve her dignity. His eyes never left her face. "They're burning," Emily whispered. "It feels like fire." Massimo removed a clean linen napkin from the table beside him and gently placed it beneath her head. "Look at me." Emily struggled to focus. "My name," his voice stayed remarkably calm, "is Massimo. You are safe now. No one will touch you again." For reasons she couldn't explain, Emily believed him. Not because of his expensive clothes, not because of the 6 enormous men silently standing around the restaurant, because his eyes held something she hadn't seen in a very long time. Absolute certainty. One of the bodyguards stepped closer. "Boss." Massimo gave the smallest nod. "Lock every entrance." The command was delivered without raising his voice. Heavy metal locks clicked almost simultaneously. The front doors, the employee exit, the kitchen entrance, even the loading dock. Confused customers looked around. What's going on? Why are the doors locked? Is this some kind of robbery? Massimo slowly stood. His height alone commanded attention. His presence did the rest. "I apologize for the inconvenience." His deep voice carried effortlessly through the restaurant. "An employee has suffered what appears to be a deliberate assault. Until emergency responders and investigators arrive." He paused. "No employee leaves this building." Kevin Doyle forced an uncomfortable laugh. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but you don't have authority to detain my staff." Massimo looked at him. Just looked. Kevin suddenly felt his confidence disappear. "I wasn't asking." Silence. Marcus Hale quietly stepped out from the kitchen. His chef's coat was stained with sauce, but his expression was deadly serious. "I saw the tray." Everyone turned toward him. It shifted once. He demonstrated with his hands. Then there was a second impact. Marcus pointed toward the service doorway. "Someone hit her twice." Rachel immediately protested. "That's ridiculous." Marcus ignored her. "A tray that heavy doesn't suddenly jump sideways." Kevin quickly interrupted. "Marcus, stay out of this." "No." The chef crossed his arms. "I've worked beside Emily for 4 years. She's one of the most careful servers I've ever trained." Several cooks standing near the kitchen quietly nodded. Rachel noticed. Her confidence began to crack. Just then, one of Massimo's bodyguards approached with a small earpiece pressed against his ear. "The ambulance is 3 minutes out. And surveillance?" The guard frowned. Someone remotely deleted the last 20 minutes from the restaurant cameras. The dining room erupted. "What? How is that possible?" Kevin's face lost all color. Rachel unconsciously took one slow step backward. Massimo noticed. He noticed everything. He slowly turned toward the ceiling, where several security cameras remained pointed at the dining room. The footage disappeared. His voice was almost conversational. Before police even arrived, he looked directly at Kevin. "Interesting." Kevin swallowed hard. It must be a technical failure." Massimo smiled for the first time. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just confirmed a suspicion. "I own technology companies. My family owns cybersecurity firms. A server doesn't erase exactly 20 minutes of footage by accident." His eyes shifted toward Rachel. "Someone deleted it." Emily suddenly whispered through clenched teeth. "I remember." Massimo immediately knelt beside her again. "What do you remember?" She struggled to breathe. "I heard Rachel." Everyone froze. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. She said, "Move." A tear rolled down her cheek. Then, I felt 2 hands. The restaurant became so quiet that even the kitchen ventilation system sounded deafening. Rachel's breathing became uneven. Kevin looked at her. For the first time that evening, he looked frightened. Outside, the distant sound of approaching sirens echoed through the city. Massimo slowly rose to his feet. He adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate calm before speaking one final sentence. "Good." He looked toward the entrance where flashing red and blue lights reflected against the restaurant windows. "Now the real investigation begins." The ambulance doors slammed shut. Emily lay on the stretcher, fighting to remain conscious, as paramedics treated the burns covering the inside of her thighs and lower legs. One medic carefully cut away the fabric fused to her skin. She cried out. Massimo never let go of her hand. "You don't have to stay," Emily whispered weakly. You've already done enough. Massimo looked at her, as though the suggestion itself was impossible. No. His answer was simple. I'm just getting started. The ambulance disappeared into the night. Only after its flashing lights vanished did Massimo finally turn back toward Bella Vista. His expression changed completely. The compassion that had softened his face only moments earlier disappeared beneath the cold authority that had made entire criminal organizations fear his name. One of his bodyguards stepped forward. Boss? Massimo didn't take his eyes off the restaurant. Tell Sofia I want every company connected to Bella Vista investigated. The guard nodded. Restaurants only? Massimo slowly shook his head. No. I want the parent corporation. The payroll company. The accounting firm. The vendors. The investors. Everything. If this wasn't an accident, then someone has been making money from it. Less than 1 hour later, the executive conference room inside De Lorenzo Holdings overlooked the city skyline. Unlike the luxurious dining room downstairs, this room contained almost nothing decorative. A long black table, several monitors, dozens of encrypted files, and Sofia De Lorenzo, Massimo's younger sister, chief financial officer, certified forensic accountant, one of the few people capable of following dirty money across international borders. She barely looked up as Massimo entered. I already started. Massimo raised an eyebrow. You assumed I'd ask. You looked angry. She smiled faintly. That usually means someone committed financial fraud. Marcus Hale sat beside her, still wearing his chef's jacket. I gave them permission to interview me. Massimo nodded. Good. Sofia tapped several keys. Bella Vista's corporate structure appeared across the wall-sized monitor. At first glance, everything looks legitimate. Restaurant profits, payroll, insurance, vendor payments, tax filings. Perfectly clean. Too perfect. Massimo leaned forward. What are we missing? Sofia enlarged one section. Employee turnover. Marcus frowned. What about it? She highlighted another spreadsheet. In 4 years, this location has replaced 47 servers. Marcus blinked. That's impossible. Exactly. The industry average is high, but not this high. She continued typing. Most resigned after less than 6 months. Massimo folded his arms. Compensation claims? None. Lawsuits? None. Exit interviews? Missing. Marcus looked increasingly uncomfortable. Emily always wondered why people disappeared. Sofia nodded. They didn't just disappear. They were replaced. She opened another file. Every resignation had something in common. Each employee left after receiving multiple disciplinary warnings. Broken glasses, missing orders, customer complaints, cash shortages. The same pattern. Again, and again, and again. Marcus slowly sat back. Those warnings. Kevin wrote every single one. Massimo remained silent. His instincts were beginning to align with the numbers. Sofia suddenly stopped typing. Interesting. She enlarged another document. Payroll summaries. What? Massimo asked. She pointed toward several employee identification numbers. Look carefully. Marcus leaned closer. I don't understand. Sofia highlighted 4 names. These employees supposedly resigned. She highlighted another report. But someone kept collecting their salaries. Silence. Marcus stared. That's impossible. No. Sofia answered quietly. It's payroll fraud. She opened another spreadsheet. The money wasn't going to the former employees. It was redirected. Massimo's voice became colder. To who? Sofia followed the electronic transfers. The money moved through 3 shell companies, then another, then another. until finally, one account remained. She enlarged the beneficiary information. The room fell silent. Marcus read the name twice. No. Massimo read it once. His jaw tightened. Blackridge Hospitality Consulting, a company with no employees, no office, no restaurant experience, only one director, Kevin Doyle. Marcus slammed both hands onto the table. That son of a Thew! Massimo raised one finger. Marcus stopped speaking. Sophia continued. This isn't small. The diverted wages total nearly $2 million over 6 years. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. 2 million? Massimo looked toward another monitor. Who owns Blackridge? Sophia typed again. The answer appeared almost immediately. Her expression changed. Boss. Massimo looked up. What? She slowly turned the monitor toward him. The company isn't independent. It belongs to someone else. She enlarged the ownership records. 30%, 40%, hidden partnerships, offshore trusts. Finally, one controlling shareholder emerged. Sophia inhaled quietly. The Romano Syndicate. The room became completely still. Marcus frowned. I've heard that name. Massimo answered without emotion. You should have. They've been trying to move into my territory for 3 years. Now everything made sense. The restaurant wasn't simply stealing wages. It was generating illegal cash, fake resignations, ghost employees, payroll diversion, money laundering. Every bullied employee who quit became another source of stolen income. Emily had survived longer than anyone else, which made her dangerous. Marcus suddenly remembered something. Rachel. Both siblings looked at him. Rachel kept telling Emily to quit. Almost every week. She'd humiliate her, destroy her confidence, convince her nobody wanted her there. Sophia quietly nodded. If Emily resigned, another ghost employee could replace her. Marcus slowly realized the horrifying truth. They never wanted her fired. They wanted her to quit. So nobody would ask questions. Massimo walked toward the window overlooking the city. Far below, ambulance lights still flashed outside Bella Vista. Emily had believed she was simply the victim of cruel co-workers. She had no idea she had accidentally survived something much larger. Massimo spoke without turning around. Rachel pushed her because Emily stopped being profitable. Sophia looked up. And now? Massimo's reflection stared back from the glass. Now, they've tried to murder the one employee capable of exposing the entire operation. His phone vibrated. The caller ID displayed Detective Owen Price. Massimo answered. What is it? The detective's voice sounded unusually serious. We interviewed the staff. And? Rachel's statement changed 3 times. Massimo wasn't surprised. There is something else. The detective hesitated. The hospital just called. Massimo's heart hardened. Emily remembered another detail. What detail? A long pause followed. When she was falling, she heard Kevin tell Rachel, "Make sure she never comes back." The conference room fell into absolute silence. Massimo slowly closed his eyes. This was no longer workplace bullying. This was conspiracy, attempted murder, organized financial crime, and someone had just handed him the witness he needed to destroy an entire criminal network. 3 weeks later, Bella Vista restaurant reopened. The crystal chandeliers sparkled. Fresh flowers decorated every table. A sign hanging near the entrance proudly announced, "Open for business." To passing pedestrians, everything appeared perfectly normal. Inside, Kevin Doyle believed the nightmare was finally over. Rachel had been suspended. The police investigation had slowed. Insurance inspectors had finished their reports. Emily was still recovering in the hospital. Without her testimony, Kevin convinced himself that nothing could be proven. He straightened his tie in the office mirror. Everything's under control. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He ignored it. 30 seconds later, the front doors opened. Every conversation inside the restaurant stopped. Massimo De Lorenzo walked in. This time, he wasn't alone. Behind him came Detective Owen Price, 2 labor investigators, 3 forensic accountants, representatives from the State Department of Labor, federal financial crime agents. And finally, Sofia De Lorenzo carrying 3 heavy archive boxes. Kevin felt every drop of blood leave his face. What is this? Detective Price calmly displayed an official warrant. Kevin Doyle, we're executing simultaneous warrants involving labor fraud, payroll theft, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and attempted obstruction of justice. The dining room fell silent. Employees exchanged frightened looks. Customers quietly stood from their tables. Several instinctively stepped aside. Massimo spoke only one sentence. Nobody leaves. Unlike the first night, this time the order came backed by the law. Federal agents immediately sealed every exit. Investigators spread throughout the building. Kitchen, office, payroll room, storage, computer servers, everything. Kevin forced himself to smile. This has to be some misunderstanding. Sofia quietly placed the first archive box onto the nearest dining table. No, it isn't. She removed hundreds of payroll records. One after another. Employee files, tax documents, bank transfers, wire confirmations, ghost employee contracts. Each document carefully labeled. Each page numbered. Each signature authenticated. Grace Donovan stared in disbelief. Marcus Hale slowly removed his chef's hat. Rachel's hands began trembling. Kevin swallowed. You can't prove I stole anything. Sofia looked almost sympathetic. Oh, we're well past proving theft. She projected a financial timeline onto a portable screen. The restaurant watched in stunned silence. 6 years. 47 employees. 47 resignations, 47 fake replacement records, millions of dollars, redirected, layered, laundered, every dollar mapped, every transaction documented. Marcus whispered, "My God." Grace covered her mouth. One investigator addressed the room. If any current employee believes they resigned under harassment, please remain after today's investigation. You may be entitled to financial restitution. Several waitresses immediately burst into tears. One young dishwasher quietly raised his hand. They did the same thing to my sister. Another employee nodded. And my cousin. Suddenly, years of silence collapsed. Story after story emerged. Bullying, false write-ups, threats, humiliation, forced resignations. Each testimony fit perfectly into the financial records. Kevin looked around desperately. You're all lying. No, a familiar voice answered. Everyone turned. The restaurant entrance slowly opened once again. Emily Harper stepped inside. She walked carefully with the help of a cane. The burns had healed. Faint scars remained visible near her knees. But for the first time, she walked with her head held high. The dining room stood completely still. Some employees couldn't even meet her eyes. Grace immediately began crying. Marcus smiled with visible relief. Massimo quietly walked toward Emily. Are you sure you want to do this? She looked around the restaurant that had once become her worst nightmare. Then she nodded. I've been afraid long enough. Massimo stepped back, giving her the room. Giving her the voice that had been stolen for years. Emily faced every employee. I believed that something was wrong with me. I believed I was clumsy. I believed I wasn't pretty enough. I believed I deserved the jokes. Her voice shook. But I was wrong. She slowly turned toward Rachel. You told me every day that customers laughed because of my body. Rachel lowered her head. Emily continued. You hid my tips. You switched my orders. You blamed me for mistakes I didn't make. You wanted me to quit. Rachel finally whispered, I'm sorry. Emily looked at her quietly. No, you're sorry you were caught. Silence. Rachel started crying. Kevin suddenly slammed both hands onto the table. This proves nothing. I never touched her. Massimo finally spoke. His voice remained calm. No, you let someone else do it. He nodded toward Detective Price. The detective placed a tablet onto the table. This footage wasn't deleted. Kevin froze. Rachel's breathing stopped. The restaurant cameras were erased. Massimo answered, yes, but not mine. Nobody understood. Massimo enlarged another video, one recorded from a private security camera hidden across the street. The angle showed the restaurant entrance through the front windows, crystal clear. Everyone watched. Emily carrying the soup, Rachel looking behind her, Kevin giving a small nod, Rachel stepping forward. First shove, Emily recovering. Second shove, the tray flying, the soup exploding. Every frame, every movement, undeniable. The entire restaurant watched in absolute silence. Rachel collapsed into a chair. Kevin's face turned completely white. Detective Price calmly handcuffed Kevin first. You are under arrest. Rachel began sobbing uncontrollably. I never meant, Emily quietly interrupted. I know. You only meant to destroy my life. Federal agents escorted Kevin toward the exit. As he passed Massimo, he whispered bitterly, You think you won? Massimo looked at him without emotion. No, Emily won. Outside, news cameras had already gathered. Former employees arrived one by one. People who had resigned years earlier. People who believed nobody would ever believe them. Today, someone finally did. Later that afternoon, the Department of Labor announced the largest wage theft settlement in the restaurant group's history. Millions of dollars would be returned. Dozens of former employees would receive compensation. Bella Vista's ownership would be permanently transferred under court supervision. Inside the now empty dining room, Emily stood alone for a moment. She looked at the polished floor, where she had once cried, I can't close my legs. The memory still hurt, but it no longer controlled her. Massimo quietly approached. They're waiting outside. Emily smiled softly. For what? He offered his hand. To thank the woman brave enough to tell the truth. Emily looked at his hand, then at the sunlight pouring through the restaurant windows. Finally, she placed her hand in his. For the first time since that terrible night, she walked through Bella Vista's front door, not as a victim, but as the woman who had brought an entire criminal operation crashing down. 6 months later, the scars had faded, not completely. Thin, pale lines still traced the inside of Emily Harper's thighs, quiet reminders of the night that had nearly destroyed her life. For months, she had hidden them beneath long skirts. Then one morning she stopped. They were no longer marks of shame. They were proof that she had survived. Outside the newly renovated Bella Vista, reporters crowded behind security barriers while photographers adjusted their cameras. The grand reopening had attracted enormous public attention, not because the restaurant had new owners, but because everyone wanted to witness what justice looked like after corruption had finally been exposed. A new bronze plaque beside the entrance read, Dedicated to every employee whose dignity deserves protection. Emily stood silently in front of it. She gently brushed her fingertips across the engraved words. Someone approached from behind. You helped write that. Massimo's voice was warm now, very different from the cold authority that had once terrified an entire restaurant into silence. Emily smiled without turning around. I only told the truth. He stepped beside her. No. You gave people permission to stop being afraid. Emily looked toward the busy sidewalk. Former employees were arriving one after another. Grace Donovan, Marcus Hale, young servers who had once resigned in tears, kitchen workers who had believed nobody would ever believe their stories. Today, they laughed together. Some hugged. Others simply stood quietly, grateful to have returned without fear. Grace wiped away a tear. I never thought I'd walk through these doors again. Marcus smiled. This place finally feels like a restaurant. Inside, everything had changed. The old management offices had become employee wellness rooms. Anonymous reporting systems had been installed. Every hallway contained security cameras monitored by an independent company. Promotion decisions were reviewed by outside auditors. Payroll records became completely transparent. Every employee received full health benefits. And above the employee entrance hung a simple sentence chosen by Emily herself. Kindness is never weakness. Hundreds of people stopped to read it. Many smiled. Some quietly cried. Massimo watched Emily greeting every former co-worker as though nothing had happened between them. She carried no bitterness. Only compassion. Sophia quietly joined her brother. You've been staring at her for 10 minutes. Massimo didn't deny it. I know. Sophia smiled knowingly. You love her. Massimo remained silent. For perhaps the first time in his life, words failed him. He had negotiated billion-dollar business deals, ended gang wars, commanded absolute loyalty from men twice his age. Yet one kind-hearted waitress somehow frightened him more than any enemy ever had. Not because she was dangerous, because she mattered. The ceremony finally began. City officials thanked investigators. Labor representatives recognized the employees who had spoken out. Detective Owen Price received an award for uncovering one of the largest workplace fraud operations in the state's history. Then, the master of ceremonies smiled. Our final recognition belongs to someone who never asked to become a hero. The audience immediately began applauding. Emily looked around in confusion. Me? Grace laughed through tears. Go! Marcus gently nodded. You've earned this. Emily slowly walked onto the small stage. The applause grew louder. She looked out across the crowd. Hundreds of faces. Former employees. Customers. Police officers. Neighbors. People she had never met. All standing. All applauding. Emily swallowed hard. Her voice trembled. I don't know what to say. The applause softened. She took one slow breath. When I fell here 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. I wasn't crying because everyone was looking at me. I was crying because I believed. They were right. She paused. I believed I wasn't enough. Another pause. But kindness has a strange way of surviving. It survives humiliation. It survives cruelty. It even survives fear. Her eyes slowly found Massimo, standing quietly near the back of the room. The first person who helped me. Didn't ask what I looked like. He didn't ask whether I deserved help. He simply knelt beside someone who was hurting. Emily smiled through tears. I hope every person listening remembers that. You never know whose life changes because you decided to be kind. The room erupted into another standing ovation. Even reporters lowered their cameras. For several seconds, nobody spoke. After the ceremony ended, guests gathered for dinner. Laughter filled the dining room. Live music drifted softly through the restaurant. Emily stepped outside for a moment to enjoy the evening air. She heard footsteps behind her. Massimo. He held something in one hand. Not an expensive necklace. Not a diamond ring. Just the neatly folded black suit jacket he had wrapped around her legs on the worst night of her life. I had it cleaned, He smiled. I couldn't throw it away. Emily gently touched the fabric. I remember thinking that someone finally saw me. Massimo looked directly into her eyes. I did. I still do. Silence settled comfortably between them. Not awkward, not uncertain, simply peaceful. Emily laughed softly. You know, you never actually finished your dinner that night. Massimo chuckled. It wasn't very important anymore. No? He slowly shook his head. I found something much better. Emily looked at him curiously. What? He reached for her hand. Carefully, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. You. Emily felt tears gathering once more. Not from pain. Not from fear, but from a happiness she had spent years believing she would never deserve. She squeezed his hand. I was so afraid I'd never be loved because I didn't look like everyone else. Massimo smiled gently. I never fell in love with your appearance. I fell in love with the woman who kept smiling while everyone else tried to make her forget how. He lifted her hand and kissed it softly. You taught me something. Emily tilted her head. What? Power can force respect. He paused. But only kindness earns love. Emily leaned against his shoulder as the lights of Bella Vista shimmered behind them. Inside, employees laughed freely. Outside, the city moved on. The corruption was gone. The fear was gone. Only hope remained. Months earlier, Emily Harper had whispered through tears, I can't close my legs. It hurts. Now she walked forward with confidence. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her, because the deepest wounds had never been on her skin. They had been in her heart. And thanks to one man who chose compassion over indifference, those wounds had finally healed. If this story touched your heart, remember that real strength is never measured by power, wealth, or appearance. It is measured by the courage to protect someone when everyone else looks away. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes kindness can still change a life. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which moment in Emily and Massimo's journey moved you the most? Thank you for watching until the very end, and we'll see you in the next story.